John Parker is with us today. This time he is in the chair of the Landscape Committee, right?
Yes.
Good to see you, John. How are you?
Yes, good morning.
So I heard it was a busy meeting yesterday, and it was actually over at the Dining Room 1 at the Performing Arts Center, just
Correct.
obviously because the boardroom here is still being worked on, right?
Well, and we anticipated because compliance letters went out on the garden to the garden
Right.
center lessees, we anticipated that there would be a fair number of people, and
Exactly.
we were correct.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's kind of was the main part, although you talked about turf reduction and other things. That was the bulk of the meeting, I bet, right?
Yes, and you know, people, we probably had 25 or 30 people come up and speak, and we changed the agenda so that we addressed that first, so they
Right.
wouldn't have to wait around. And one of the biggest issues was, unfortunately, there was a sentence that talked about excess stuff in your garden plot. And then it said chairs, umbrellas, tables. And it was not our intention at all to say you couldn't have a chair, you couldn't have a table, and you couldn't have an umbrella. And so that was an unfortunate misunderstanding, and hopefully we clarified that yesterday. Yes, you can have a chair. Yes, you can have a table. Yes, you can have an umbrella. But the point that I would like to make is that if you have a garden plot, and our standard garden plot is 200 square feet, and there's, excuse me, there are still some people that are grandfathered at 400 square feet.
Right.
Are you going to take that valuable growing space and use it to have tables and chairs and umbrellas? And I brought in a folding chair like you see at every soccer game, and,
Yeah.
you know, any event where people bring their own seats. And to me, a chair like that, you have a chair, it'll fit in your storage area, and it's not taking growing space.
Right.
But that's a personal decision, and we're not going to become the chair and table and umbrella police. So hopefully we clarified that.
Okay.
I would like to compliment the majority of the people who received the letters regarding compliance are going in and addressing the issues that were pointed out. If you go to either garden center, the minute the dumpsters are emptied, they're filled. And we've increased the frequency of the pickups. But people are, you know, making the garden center a better environment.
Great.
The fencing, the perimeter fencing, which at Garden Center 2, when it is completed, there will be a card swipe. And only Garden Center lessees and their accompanied guests will have access to Garden Center 2. And in Garden Center 1, we're taking the old key punch locks that were on the tennis courts, and those will be the way because we have no electricity.
That's right, yeah.
And so Garden Center 1, there'll be a code, and like there was on the tennis courts, and we'll have to figure out a system of how frequently that code changes, and that will only be available to the Garden Center lessees. And as I said yesterday, if you start sharing that code with people who shouldn't have the code,
Right.
you're defeating the purpose
Yeah, exactly.
of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And the completion date for that perimeter fencing was supposed to be today. They're close. Everything's at Garden Center 2, it's all there. It just, the swiping thing has not been activated. And we had a little redesign on the entry gate at Garden Center 1 so that if a lessee wanted to take a golf cart in or something bigger that wouldn't fit through the regular pedestrian gate, they could do that. So we're accommodating that. We're also exploring generators at Garden Center 1. And actually the president of the Garden Center group, Sue Margolis, did some research and found some solar-powered generators.
Oh, that would be nice.
So we're looking into solar-powered generators, and then we're also looking at actually having the typical gas-powered generator. And we are in the process of finally, for the first time ever, having a person, an employee from the landscape department, that person's only duty would be the garden centers.
Okay.
And that's maintenance activities.
Mm-hmm.
But having somebody there every day is going to be wonderful.
Yeah, it would be.
And so we would have an employee that if somebody had a need for power, that employee could put it out. And
that would be
so
nice.
on. So that kind of takes away the liability and some of those sorts of things. Another thing that came up when people spoke was, previously, if somebody worked in the garden center, if somebody hired a handyman or a contractor, we had no liability waiver for that person. So when we did the policies and procedures, redid them, we created a waiver for a handyman or a contractor,
Okay.
and we've discussed this here before. And included in that waiver, we also put down the California State Contractors Licensing Law, so people are aware of that. And if GRF hires a contractor, we have a very stringent contract, and we
Right.
also have $1 million liability policy that that person has to carry. Well, unfortunately, some information has been passed down to the garden center lessees that anybody they hire has to have that kind of $1 million liability.
Right.
And your average handyman or contractor is not going to have that. So, little misinformation there. Obviously, it's a person's choice whether they hire a handyman or a contractor.
Right.
And if you hire a contractor, you have some recourse under
Yeah.
the law. And at the same, if you are hiring somebody and you choose to inquire about what kind of insurance they carry, fine. But we're not going to get involved in that.
Okay.
Because that is between the garden center lessee and whoever they hire.
Okay.
We require the waiver. So nobody has restrictions placed on them by us as to
Okay.
who they hire. And there's been some misinformation on that.
Okay.
The other thing that we did yesterday is we, to tell the people how it was determined whether their garden plot was in compliance or non-compliance. We actually had people from our manor alterations department. They're the ones that did the inspection, and they're the ones that did the termination. So we had Yvette Jones from that department there to speak. And so she told what they looked for, how they determined it, and so on. And I think that was helpful. And then she also said that they'll be revisiting it to see, because there has been an attitude that nobody's ever going to enforce this. And there's a new sheriff in town.
Right.
Let's see.
Let me ask you something, if I may. When you talked about people having chairs and things like that, and you talk about a plot size, let's say the 200 square feet, which is pretty decent size. It's actual, on that, they may have a raised bed that's 8 by 8, and then the rest is gravel. Am I getting that right? Or they could have several beds, however they want it, and they build those beds themselves over, years ago, but let's say it's a brand new, fresh plot. They're responsible if they want to put a raised bed in for building that according to whatever plan is.
Yeah, we're not, essentially we are leasing 200 square feet. And and so whatever improvements, and we, this came up time and time and time again, and it's kind of the broken record, but it's GRF's position that is our responsibility to provide a secure perimeter.
Right.
If you go to any community garden in Southern California, you will not see the level of construction that has become the norm in our garden center. I call it Fort Knox for tomatoes.
Right.
And so people would get up and say, it's going to cost me $2,000 to do this, and why should I have to? Well, you don't have to. That is a personal choice. And so that's a point that some people just don't seem to get.
Right.
And if you go to other garden centers, they're able to grow very satisfactorily what they want without having that level of construction.
Right, exactly.
And the other thing is that several people got up and said, oh, I grow and I give to all my neighbors and I give to this and I give to that. Well, that's another reason why 200 square feet is perfectly adequate.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that probably the majority of those people that have that kind of overabundance
Right.
are in 400 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the intention is to create farms.
Right, exactly.
The intention is that you are able to grow, you know,
Yeah.
but not
exactly.
necessarily for the whole village.
Right.
So, and then we were also criticized, you know, why are you making us do all these things? And I said, because we're trying to improve a facility
Mm-hmm.
and raise the standard and raise the management level. And we are trying to be sensitive to the fact that you can't just come in and change everything. And if we really wanted to be dictators, we could have said, nobody gets 400 square feet.
Right.
So it's kind of a give and take. And I think
Okay.
we're getting there. I think
The
we're
other
getting
question I have, and we may have talked to this before, if people have their own citrus tree or whatever it might be, and it starts to get overgrown, the roots could go beyond their 200 square foot plot, or is, but I always had a question about that.
Well, the tree plots are separate from
Okay,
the garden
all right,
plots, and,
okay.
and actually the rules and regulations don't allow trees in the garden plots
Okay.
because shade.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the tree plots are separate. So
Can someone have both, a tree plot and
yes,
a garden plot? Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Couple of things I'd like to mention.
sure.
And one is I'd like to really compliment Channel 6 on some of the changes.
Oh, well, thank you.
The movies are, I mean, I have been so much enjoying
We're getting some good
watching
ones.
really good ones,
Yeah.
and I can't wait until next Monday because I really wanted to see Beloved or Moonlight,
Yeah, Moonlight, yeah.
and I never got to the theater. And same way with Manchester and
La La Land we have coming up, and yeah.
So I just
Lion,
think
yeah.
I think that's a wonderful thing. But also, I just happened to get a couple of minutes of the Trading Post the other day, and just having the photos mounted instead of on a piece
Right.
of shake. So there's a lot of small things that are happening, but it's not very noticeable.
Oh, great.
So kudos.
Do you like the makeup too?
Well, I'll tell you after I watch the tape.
All right.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention that I did mention in our landscape meeting yesterday is that Maggie Blackwell, who's going to be on the program
Mm-hmm.
later this morning, and James Tung, who represents Third
Yeah.
Mutual, they are both the chairperson of their landscape
Mm-hmm.
committees in those mutuals. And I just think for people who in their work experience did not have any background in landscape and so on, here's two people I think that are doing a fabulous job. And
Right,
I
yeah,
think
they
they
are.
should be complimented.
Yeah,
I
they
really
definitely are.
I respect very, very much what they're doing.
Yeah,
So,
very good. I know you have a meeting to get to,
yes.
so thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on.
One
more thing?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm speaking to the Friends of the Village this afternoon at 2
Oh, okay.
2 o'clock.
That's right, you are.
Yes, so-
Okay, very good. Good to see you, and we will be right back.